afternoon, Innsmouth Hive. The Corridor 55 killer has struck again, taking 3 heads just outside the Red Squig Brewery on Sublevel 69. These are the first murders that have taken place in any gang's territory, and we reached out to the Exilia and asked the spokesperson to comment, and they said, make sure to keep your head while drinking Red Squig. Not really sure that helps, but whatever. We are your armored high-collar coat in the alleyways of life, 665.66 UHMR Chemrat Radio, coming to you this afternoon from the Toenail. Remember, the Toenail is neutral territory for all gangs of the Underhive, and that even includes the Arbites. I am your deranged warlock for the duration of this flight, or maybe fall Goblin King, and I am joined by my explosive, far-seeing co-host, Marky.
I thought you were going to say like explosive farting co-host. And I was like, that ain't me. That's Kevin.
Sorry, I do seem to carry the blessings of Nurgle sometimes.
Our devilish dark reaper of malice, Beast.
Hey, everyone.
And coming in from the long cold is our outcast ranger of the outer walls, Kevin. Tell us, Kevin, how does Recaf on Sublevel 1 compare to the Toenail's special blend of Whiskey Calf?
I would say it's almost worth the 12-hour climb on the outside of the Hab Dome, but, it's almost that good.
That's a morning commute if I've ever heard one.
Oh, it's rough.
Just for some recaf?
Gotta do what you gotta do.
Just for some recaf. This is episode 22 and a continuation of our series on the Aeldari. Our focus will be on how the Craftworld Eldari are played today, as well as what makes up a lot of their current and up-to-date lore. If you're just joining us, probably go and listen to those first couple of episodes in the series. We are going to recap as quickly as possible. Eldari were created by the Old Ones to fight the Necron. They are basically space elves. They're not descended from primates like humans, but most likely descended from something a little bit closer to a large predatory cat. However, they are so freaking old, no one really knows anymore. Is that canon
that the humans actually evolved from primates?
Yeah, that's why the Eldari call human the Monkai. Yeah. the dirty primate descended Monkai.
Because I'm sure they came sailing past Earth at some point and were like, oh, look at these
little
primitive
monkeys.
Rock bashers. Yeah. And they came back later and they're like, hey, they're hairless now and they have bigger sticks.
Oh, that's almost like the Tau, right? Because we're like, oh, the Tau, they're just cave dwelling, blueberries. We'll come back.
Fun ironies is that the Eldar look at humans the way the
as we looked at Tau, yeah.
And then the Tau came back and we're like, what? And the humans are coming over to the Eldar like we're pretty big now.
There's a lot of lore that suggests the Old Ones were involved in a lot of intelligent species in the universe up to a certain point, being that the Old Ones probably seeded Earth and started primates.
Yeah, definitely.
Evolution into humans. There's nothing to suggest that the Tau are nearly old enough to have been influenced by the Old Ones. So
I always kind of thought that was
the Tau.
That was interesting that the Tau are probably the only non-Old Ones major player in the galaxy.
Or at least one of the only ones that we know of.
Well, yeah, obviously the Necrons are a little different because I don't think the Necrons were made by the Old Ones, right?
No, the Necrons and the Old Ones were the original battle force.
Yeah. So the Necrons evolved on their own. Well, the Necron tier or whatever they were before.
Well, no, the Necron tier, the Catan evolved them.
No. So the Necron tier evolved on their own, and then the Necron tier found the Old Ones, asked the Old Ones to fix their issue. The Old Ones said "fuck you," and then the Necron tier found the Satan, and the Satan are like, "We can fix you."
Yeah,
who were like, "We can fix you and help you fight the other guys."
Here's a metal cock,
and that did not work out real well for them.
No, it didn't work out good for anybody. Actually, I feel like all 3 races ended up losing that fight.
Right. So when the Necron defeated the Old Ones and then defeated the Catan, they decided to go to their big sleepy time. The Eldari inherited the galaxy, mostly expanding into what was left of the Old Ones' old empire. The Eldari ruled the galaxy for an incredibly long time, interacting with humanity during the rise of the Dark Age of technology. There was some trading. There was obviously some war and some stuff like that. But Eldari society had become hedonistic and had a rotting core. And eventually in M30 on the human timeline, just around the same time as the Great Crusade started, their decadence and avarice led to the birth of Slaanesh. Ever since, the Eldari have been in decline. Their souls are prized by she who thirsts, and she lusts after Eldari souls like she lusts after no one else's. Now, In current lore, the Eldari look at humanity with bated breath, worried that the younger race will repeat some of their same mistakes and could lead to the birth of another chaos god.
Yeah, the emperor.
Yep. I read something within the last couple of days that said there is another concern that there's maybe that I don't think it was the Tau. It may have been the Tau. There's another race that they're like, oh, maybe they're going to birth the 5th Chaos God. So I think we're getting a lot of teases lorically that there's going to be another Chaos God soon.
I mean, Tau birthed that fucking
Tau did.
Abomination thing. The Tau, the big Tau head face thing.
The humans kind of did it too.
Oh, I guess it was the humans, right? The humans birthed that big Tau blueberry head
the
thing.
Tau demon, yeah.
I mean, it's the amalgamation of, the Gavesa in service of the Tau. The tiniest imprint that Tau have on the war.
But that's not an official ruinous power. That's just like a minor
just
entity
like minor
now.
demon thing. Yeah.
It's interesting. I like the idea that they're playing with lorically playing with advancing that portion of the storyline. So since their fall from grace and their scattering to the stars, the Aeldari have interacted with the various races of the galaxy and the Imperium by large through one of 5. Why do I always burp in the middle of a sentence?
I was like, is he stroking out? What's happening? I'm like watching Ryan slump.
I smell toast.
At work, I'll answer.
Does anybody else smell toast?
It's just dead. Ryan?
Bro, that's what you get for moving.
It's the worst. I'll answer the call at work with the generic spiel, and immediately, as soon as I finish it, I'll have to burp.
Oh,
I'm always like,
oh yeah, right.
You have to let the mic pick it up.
I like when you're public speaking and just in the middle, you're like, I'm sorry, I've got a.
You're like,
and everybody that you're presenting to is like, we're not buying that product now. And that was gross. Yeah, so since their fall from grace and their scattering to the stars, the Eldari have interacted with the various races of the galaxy and the Imperium by and large through one of 5 major factions. We have listed them in order of how likely they are to be encountered, and we will be going into each in detail. However, this particular episode, we are going to focus on the Craftworlds, and then we are going to move from covering Eldari into covering a couple of other topics and getting into the Astra Militarum before we come back and deal with the Drukhari on down. So the overview of these factions based on population base and how often they are to be encountered are the Asuryani, which are the Craftworld Eldar. This faction is represented both on tabletop and heavily throughout the lore. And if you go out and you start an Eldar army using Tom's kind of
my proven method of ultimate destruction.
Right. The golden 3, that's what you call it, right? The rule of 3, the rule of golden 3,
the golden
3 rule.
Yeah. It's just the golden 3.
The golden, it's the simple version of what it said.
Exactly. I'm like, you're making it way more complicated.
So if you use Tom's golden 3 rule, the Eldar that you're picking up are the Asuryani. That's the Craftworld Eldar. The next major faction are the Drukhari, who are the Dark Eldar. This faction is represented both on the tabletop and in lore and can be played in 3 different ways. So they're kind of like a book of 3 different armies, and that's why they'll get their entire own dedicated episode. The Harlequins, this is a faction that has been in the lore for a long time, but has only been playable on tabletop for the last few editions. They're pretty cool though. I think back in like 3rd, you could get them, but it was 1 troop. They were kind of like a kill team. Like here's the 5.
Or like Legion of the Damned, essentially.
Yeah, essentially. The Yannari, which is the newest faction, both in tabletop and in lore. We will get into them in detail probably on their own episode because they play real weird. The Exodites, while they've been in the rules from time to time and they've been in the lore forever, they get kind of the least amount of rule support, which kind of sucks.
Yeah, the hill people,
and
right?
then exactly the hill people, the Amish, the space Amish.
The hills have pointy ears.
The dandelion eaters. And then there are Eldar Outcasts. And Eldar Outcasts, we don't necessarily list as one of our major 5 because Eldar Outcasts is kind of a catch-all term. Think of how the Imperium uses Outcasts and Renegades. Same vibe.
They're usually like the space pirate kind of thing, or
yeah, they can be the
like
Eldar
mercenaries?
outcasts can take on a couple of different roles. Mercenaries and pirates are really common. However, and we'll be covering them in brief today, there is the path of the outcast in the Asuryani paths, and that's where rangers and pathfinders come from.
oh,
So again, the Craftworld Eldari or the Asuryani are one of the big 3 factions in the game. This episode, we're going to go into depth on Craftworlds, how Craftworlds and Wraithbone work, and a bunch of other stuff. And then we'll return to Dark Eldar as we move forward. Dark Eldar have a lot more horror vibes, so they might even be featured in a Loris Obscurus episode with a tantalizing creepypasta tale. We had to come up with a name for creepypastas that come from the grimdark
Already
universe.
did Spooky Dookies.
Spooky Dookie.
Spooky
There you go.
Dookies.
A Nurgle nugget and a Spooky Dookie about the Drukhari
That's good.
before we dip into their lore. But we're going to talk a little bit about tactics and how the Eldari play. Anything that really kind of comes down to list building and tactics, we will probably feature a little bit more heavily in a hobby episode. We're going to really just kind of focus on the lore stuff with where we're going. So to jump into the Asuryani, do you guys have any big opinions about Craftworld Eldar before we start laying stuff out?
Yeah,
And
they're
not
stinky and I don't
Craftworlds
like 'em.
themselves. They're stinky and I don't like them. Not the Craftworlds themselves. We'll talk about the major Craftworlds kind of towards the end.
I always liked the idea of craft worlds. Honestly, anything that is like a giant moving city, I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, Craftworlds are pretty fucking dope.
I mean, craft worlds are essentially, you know,
Greg Neck.
it's not even close to the same thing. But
I was just talking about the orc, orc cities.
oh yeah, the rocks.
Dude, I'm gonna like make a rock and call it Greg Neck.
That would be dope.
This is
And then there should be like a big Morka knot in the middle that's covered in rocks.
Yeah, it's Greg Neck.
It's just a giant boulder with like legs.
Oh, you could do that. You take the parts from a dreadnought, like the joints from a dreadnought.
Dude, it'd be hilarious
and
if
then
it was just the little legs, big ass boulder.
No, I was thinking like you could actually make it where it's like the joints and stuff from the legs, but you make it from one rock to another rock.
Oh yeah.
So instead of it being
like little boulders,
yeah, it's like little boulders instead of legs. Like,
That's pretty fucking funny.
Craft roads are cool. They've always I've more. I think they would be such a good base for stories.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of
Like their
storytelling
point of view.
opportunities.
Yeah, like, the living on a craft world, I mean, it's kind of like craft worlds are basically a way so that Games Workshop can be like, yeah, no, they're like Space Marines. You have chapters. I mean, craft worlds,
Right.
and you live on a craft world. I mean, or you live on a hive. I mean, craft world.
What's do they have a god that they like pray to or anything? Or I know they're all dead, but
They've got a couple of gods. Yannari is, or not Yannari, Yanid is the newest god of the Eldar. And then there's Kegarak, who those are both
right.
alive.
That's like the Harlequin one. But
Technically, Isha is still alive as well.
Yeah.
Isha is.
I just picture like when
Captured in Nurgle's garden.
Cain was destroyed, but shards of Cain exist.
And that's how they like bring the
shard
avatar
of Cain.
right?
Yep.
but like Tom was saying, like how they like, oh yeah, start a story from the Eldar's point of view. It's like Eldar, they perfect a craft, and it's like, hey, it's me again, just making this bowl again. Day 80,564. Just
If you're a crafter or an artisan, you probably follow Vol, who is the smith god.
Yeah.
whatever. He's a pointy-eared bastards.
Which I always think is really cool, or not necessarily really cool, but it's interesting because the Vulcans also have a god of smiths,
Oh, really?
and it's a very similar name. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember when I was watching Star Trek, I'm like, y'all drank from the same Kool-Aid.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Vulcans are based off of elves.
Yeah.
There's a lot of similarities between the gods of the different races, specifically like the variant gods that the humans follow and the ruinous power gods that have links to the Eldar pantheon. And a lot of Eldar lore, if we get into like a how to creative write from the Eldar's perspective, which we'll probably do at a certain point, I imagine we'll do like how to write from the Imperium's perspective, how to write from the Eldar's perspective as far as developing lore. The Eldar tell a lot of their stories through myths and legend. They've got written histories, but even in that case, even though it is a written history and it's a real history, they have a tendency to be like, oh, this is the legend of blah, blah, blah. They have a very oral based history. They don't have a very like,
yeah, they do.
written.
After Slanesh, I mean, very oral.
It was like that's like the joke, or not
Annals
the
of their
joke.
history.
The very, very cool lore that was proposed in the Discord yesterday, and my immediate response was giggity because somebody said Slanish and Sisters of Battle in the same sentence. And I was like, your idea is probably cool, but I have to make a fifth grader joke right now.
Dude, I guess this kind of counts. But so I watched the new Total Recall last week.
Oh, it's so bad.
Dude, I was like,
Terrible, but it's not good.
I was like, they're not on Mars.
Got some good action.
Yeah,
The three titty girl, because like the whole excuse for like three titty girl was like mutants, right? Like mutants on Mars. It's like there was no reason to have a three titty girl in the new movie.
The whole point of Three Titty Girl was to have three titties. That was it.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a backstory, but there's lore behind it.
100%, Kevin.
Right. No, I agree,
100%.
but I'm just saying the reason they put it in was just to put it in.
Yeah, exactly. In the new one. Yeah.
There's some cool action sequences in the new one, but I definitely agree with you. The original, I own both of them, but the original is, if you're going to ask me to sit down and watch Total Recall, I'm going to watch the Arnie version.
Right. It's not the same movie.
Exactly.
It's not even close.
Yeah.
Like the only thing they got
like
right was they're like, we're going to give somebody amnesia.
Exactly.
Like, it's like, oh, cool. That's it. Similarity stop.
But like it's not like Dread where like if you can watch the new Dread and be like, this is badass.
The new Dread is amazing.
Right?
But if you've read the original Total Recall, it's not called Total Recall. It's called like Did Androids Dream of Electric Sheep or
I was
something.
gonna say there's a book.
Wait, is that one really? Do androids dream of electric sheep?
No. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is the story that Blade Runner is based on. I can't remember
Blade Runner. Okay.
Total Recall is based on another book by Philip K. Dick.
Oh, same guy. Okay.
Yep, same author. And that movie, or the new movie follows the storyline of the short story a little bit better because in the short story they never leave Earth, they never go to Mars. It's all.
Oh, really?
I've been to Mars in his brain. He never actually goes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the original Total Recall is just one of those like movies that made us, though. I feel it's so core to how we grew up.
Oh, yeah. Are you kidding me?
Movie
I watched that movie when I was
like
like 10. I was like, this movie's amazing.
2 weeks.
Don't remake Commando. Don't make Commando more realistic. Just leave Commando alone.
Yeah.
That's the one where he's like, he's got two M60s and he's just like, yeah, that's Commando.
It's the
right?
one where like the fat guy, the fat like Australian dude is like ex special forces and he wears a chainmail vest. Yeah, it's bad.
What?
Arnold kills somebody with a like vent pipe. And doesn't he say something like, "Oh, he's been ventilated,"
Yeah,
or something like that? Oh no! He shoves the steam pipe into the dude's.
He's been ventilated.
He shoves the steam pipe into the guy's chest, and he goes, "You need to blow off some steam."
That's it.
The ventilated thing is from the 007, the first 007 with Pierce Brosnan. The Russian chick like shoots the vents in the ceiling, and the Sean Bean like turns to her and goes, "Are you done?" And she's like, "I ventilated the problem," or some dumb. I mean, it's funny, but like, it's just one of those things. As soon as you realize it's in context of Arnie jokes, but it's not Arnie making the joke.
You can't do the Arnie joke.
The only one that I ever saw that they did well was in Hot Fuzz. he's like, yeah, no, I punched him and he fell into the freezer. He's like, did you say anything good, like cool off or anything? He's like, no, I didn't. He's like, shame.
Shame.
I like when the priest comes out and he's got his hands up and he's like, "Please, can we stop with all this mindless violence?" And then he like cocks his hands and guns come in and he just starts shooting. Fucking Hot Fuzz is one of those movies where you're like, "Oh, really? What's going on? Holy fuck."
Yeah.
It just like
point,
all of a sudden it fucking turns and you're
If
like,
you watch
"Wait
it
a
with
minute,
the director
what?"
commentary on, it makes a lot more sense, actually.
Oh, really? I don't think I've ever watched.
I've never watched any other
Hot
movie
Fuzz.
with director commentary on.
Yeah.
But I was in Europe and we bought Hot Fuzz and we watched it on the laptop in the tour bus, but we didn't have any other movies to watch.
So you watched the
We
director's
watched
commentary.
it again with the director's commentary.
Damn, dude.
Because we were bored.
Does it feel different? Like if you watch it with the director's commentary?
They explain a lot of like random things, and you learn things about the movie you had no idea. So when they, I know this is completely off topic,
Right? Yeah.
when they end
Derailed
up,
the fuck out of this.
like the big final like bad guy,
Yeah.
it makes the little like Mario bling sound. And they're
Oh.
like, yeah, we
Oh,
put
yeah.
that in there because they beat the final boss.
Oh.
So
Yeah.
like, there's a bunch of like little nuggets like that they strung in there
That they explain.
that they explain. They're like, yeah, these are all references to other things.
Oh,
That's
okay.
why It's
And
like
if you
kind of
watch the
scatterbrain.
movie, I mean, I've seen the movie a lot. It's one of my favorite movies. But if you watch the movie enough times, you start to pick up how they're stringing everything together. If you've seen the movie like 10-ish times, I would say, you see how they're going to get to the major gunfight at the end within like the first 5 or 10 minutes. It's very clearly laid out that they're going that way.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing with what you're saying is, the guys that wrote the Cornetto trilogy, Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and At World's End, they used to have a show called Spaced on the BBC, which was basically just a bunch of nerd jokes. It's a really funny show. It's a little weird to watch because of when it was recorded. It's one of those things where like in our minds, we're like, this should be widescreen, but it's in
It's
4x3
still 480.
format still.
Oh,
Yeah.
jeez.
There's an entire episode that's references to playing way too much Resident Evil and being like the first Resident Evil and being stuck in the game, like mentally, like seeing yourself from weird camera angles. And they play with a lot of stuff like that. It's a pretty fucking funny show.
Yeah.
But if you watch those 3 movies, knowing that, you're like, oh shit, there's video game references in all of this shit.
Oh, yeah.
Like everywhere.
Watch the new Truth Seekers series on Amazon.
That's the one where they're like ghost hunters, right?
Yeah. It's
Yeah, that
basically
looks funny as shit.
basically like well no it's different, but it's basically kind of like that. Like it's all like every episode has like a conclusion in the sense of like we've beaten it. You know what I mean? Like
That's
we
cool.
beat
That's
we
super
beat
cool.
the game. Like
Yeah.
That's awesome. Those guys are pretty funny.
Yeah.
So to refocus back on the Asuryani, who are our main topic for today, they consider themselves the children of Asurai. Wow. I like how I can say Asuryani, but not Asuran.
Asuran?
There's just
Asuran?
there's just
I
not
was
a
gonna
fucking
say
I
what
at the
ass
end of
you're
it.
in?
I don't-
What
Why
ass
is
you
this
in?
so fucking? It's Azu Ryan is the guy's name.
Azurian.
The children of Azu Ryan.
Azurian?
I always
Azurian.
pronounced it
Thank
like
you.
Asurian.
I can say that's the funny thing because I can say Asuryani, but I can't say Azurin.
Asurian.
Yeah. As
Like
Assyrian.
color, azure,
Yeah, that makes sense.
yin.
The children of Assyrian, these survivors of the Eldari people popularized the term Eldar amongst other species that they war and trade with. So Eldar never refer to themselves as Eldar. It's a word that they spread to the galaxy. So other species had a term that wasn't dirty in their mind.
Well, that
And
wasn't
among
made up
themselves-
of a non-Elven language. Well, non-Eldar language.
Yeah. Among themselves, they either call themselves the Eldari or based on their faction. So the Asuryani call themselves the Asuryani.
yeah, it was the Aeldari. That was like that's the proper name.
The Asuryani now live on vast continent-sized starships known as Craftworlds. They escaped the ever-hungering desires of Slaanesh by relying on their advanced mystical-seeming technology, which is the base structure of a craft world, and that is the psychoactive substance called Wraithbone. So we're going to get into Wraithbone real quick, and then we're going to talk about
Say it's a psychoactive
Craftworlds themselves.
substance.
Yeah, it's
It's like a mushroom.
That's
No,
psychedelic.
it's like-
Whatever.
Fuck.
Well, no,
Moving on.
he's right. They call the ingredients in like LSD psychoactive
Or psychotropics.
or psychotropic. Yeah, psychoactive in this sense means it's activating your psychic potential. Wraithbone is a form of crystallized psychic energy that can exist in real space. It is brought forth and shaped through an Eldari, concentrating their thoughts and intention into it. It is often said that they sing Wraithbone into existence and shape. All Eldari can influence and control Wraithbone to some minor levels. As an example, an Asuryani on the path of the artisan can use minor manipulations of the Wraithbone to create a tool like a hammer or possibly shape a piece of art or sculpt or something. However, they're not going to be able to create a more complex structure like a weapon or a starship
This is
or
the
a
Wraithbone?
vehicle. This is
Dude,
Wraithbone.
So dirty thought right now, but I'm going to share it with you guys. So get this. Hear me out. Hear me out.
Path of the sex worker.
No. So what are the little gems called?
Soulstone.
Spirit stones.
All right. So Wraithbone, right? Wraithbone dildo with your ex-husband's Wraithstone thing powering it.
I mean, that would slowly mean you deplete your long lost lover of their life soul as you pleasure yourself, which would basically slowly descend you into being a dark Eldar.
Yeah, exactly. That's the type of stuff. That's the type of hedonism. That's the type of hedonism and avarice that leads to being a
That's how
Drukhari.
Dark Eldar. That's how Slaanesh got born. Was exactly that bullshit.
It's like that shit right there.
It's Mark's fault. It's Mark's fucking fault.
That is a story.
Slaanesh got born.
That is a story.
Story of Slaanesh. Yeah, it's already been there, done that.
Wraithbone is essentially more grown than it is fashioned. You know, like humans pour concrete, Eldar grow Wraithbone.
Do you find something funny about the word Wraith Boner?
I don't want to say anything. So it grows like a tree or what?
Essentially, it's a natural. Think of the general concept of like fantasy elves in like a D&D setting. They're always like, oh, we didn't build our city, we grew in the trees, or whatever.
So it's like a crystal or tree.
Think of the wood elves. Think of the fucking wood elves from the Hobbit movies.
You know how when you go into when you saw the Hobbit movies, like, right? You know when they go into Elfland, like the insides of the trees is all like made out of wood,
right?
But none of it looks cut.
Yeah,
right.
That's because they sing to it, and it grows to their whim.
That is the most hippy dippy shit I've ever heard.
Yeah, they're called elves.
That's the reason elves are called hippies. It isn't because they like trees.
They call elves hippies?
Dude, that's been the joke since the dawn of time.
Really?
Elves are
so
hippies.
bone singers, which are the people who sing Wraithbone into shape, are capable of creating highly functional and complex constructs like weapons, starships, and
I knew that was going to get him.
It's just
boner singers.
Jesus Christ, Mark.
I didn't want to say anything.
Okay. So what you got to do, put in your mind right now, because stop thinking about dicks. I know it's gonna be hard for you.
Trying.
Right. I gotta go.
And start thinking about skeletons and
Stop
creepy
making
stuff.
like what is it? Analogous statements about singing about boners.
Right, so the way
so instead of thinking of a boner singer, think of like a skeleton singer or a necromancer who's controlling skeletons.
So, you know, when you think of over in the Middle East or wherever have you in, the other side of the planet from us right now,
he's going to make it worse.
I'm trying not to be offensive. You know the guys that use a little flute and play.
That's exactly what I was thinking. That's it. Yeah.
Comes out. So you know how like
imagine that, but a dick.
That's what I was thinking. That's why I was trying not to laugh.
But instead of a dick, a crystal that grows like a fast-growing tree.
That looks like a dick.
No, it looks like
Mark just
crystal.
Really
I'm sorry.
It looks like bone.
I was trying not to bring it up.
The reason it's called Wraithbone is because it looks like bone. It looks like human bones.
I bet it does.
Jesus Christ, Mark. It looks like human dead things.
Just move on. I'll get over it.
So
to create highly functional and complex constructs like Wraith constructs, weapons, and starships, an Eldari bone singer is required. Wraithbone's origin is lost in time before humanity even learned to walk on two legs. However, it is used in every facet of Eldari construction. So weapons, armors, tanks, vehicles, robotic constructs, structures, buildings.
Sex toys.
Stop.
Did you hear that, Mark?
I'm trying. All right.
Their taint is made of bone.
Jesus Christ. You guys are not helping Mark at all.
I'm just trying to get it all out of him so we can finish.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I was saying. Just move on. I'll get over it.
Wraithbone is a psychic conductor. It's able to act as an armor, even as it acts to physically move psychic energy and other forms of energy or communications. And this happens at a much more refined rate than wires or fiber optics are capable of. So as to where humans build power armor, and inside the power armor there's cablings and there's conduits and everything. When the Eldar build power armor, the bone itself, the material it's made of itself, is transferring all the information and energy. It's a much more efficient system. It also naturally generates a psychic shield, which can be projected to protect the occupants of a spacecraft from the creatures of the warp, as well as generating protective fields that are used on Craftworlds to keep atmosphere in the ship.
Oh, so it's like a natural like Geller field?
It's a natural Geller field. And then if you've ever seen artists' renditions of Craftworlds, a lot of times they'll have like these huge open decks, and there's no window, there's no shield, there's nothing. The Wraithbone is projecting a shield around it. So they can just, essentially, they're just walking out in space, and the Wraithbone, as long as you're within the like boundaries of the Wraithbone, you're inside that field.
So it's like a big aircraft carrier with the city on top of it.
Yeah, imagine an aircraft carrier being in space, and you could just walk around on the top of the aircraft carrier without a helmet on. And the different pictures and the different, and I'll try to find one and throw it up in the video version.
I'll find one to show him.
The different pictures of the Craftworlds are fucking dope. They're very, very cool.
They always kind of remind me of, I know they don't look anything necessarily like it, but to me, they give off the same vibe as like Agrabah from Aladdin.
Yeah, I can see that.
In a very vague sense of the way. It just...
I think of the old D&D art for Spelljammer with all like the crazy, like they can look like cutter ships, or you know, they've got lots of open decking and stuff. They're really dope looking, but they're fucking huge. Come on. Wraithbone is often referred to as a psychoplastic material and is capable of a limited amount of self-repair. It, along with the other building materials the Eldari prefer, grow and react like living tissue more than they would a traditional building material. So Wraithbone will be intertwined with wood. It'll be intertwined with other natural elements, other things that grow a lot of times.
Almost looks like a Tyranidy. Like if Norval's wearing a thing.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, it's because it's organic. It's still supposed to look organic.
Oh, okay.
So its psychic structure also creates a spirit network that can become a repository for the spirits of dead Asuryani heroes, who can be called upon to fight again by inhabiting the robotic constructs known as Wraithlords and Wraithguard. This same psychic structure allows the massive inner spirit network of the Infinity Circuit to exist at the center of a craft world. The other piece of technology that is used in this are called spirit stones, a wraithbone construct that captures an Eldari's soul at the moment of their death. So a spirit stone is actually made of wraithbone. It's just a different way of forming wraithbone. It is these spirit stones which can be merged into the Infinity Circuit, and it is these spirit stones that hold warrior spirits to a wraith construct. So most Eldar have, like, if you look at the model line, they have little gems on them. If you look at the art, they have little gems on them. Those are spirit stones. If you look at the constructs also have them. So in the case of a guardian is wearing a spirit stone in case they die. If they die, that spirit stone is going to kind of act like a ghost trap from Ghostbusters. It's going to trap their soul inside of it. And then after the battle, somebody will come along,
almost like Gene Seed, or
it kind of serves the function of Gene Seed.
Yeah. So somebody would come along and they would take that spirit stone and they would go back. Mm-hmm. They would go back to the Infinity Circuit of the craft world, and they would merge the spirit stone into the craft world's Infinity Matrix, I believe it's called. We'll get to it in a second.
Yeah. So the like Wraith Lords and stuff like that, they're not like dreadnoughts in the sense of like it's that guy. No. It's a bunch of stones powering a suit, right?
So it's kind of like a
so there's usually one. So the reason they have a bunch of stones on them is because if you take a rocket to the chest and your only spirit stone is on your chest, obviously the spirit stone is going to be destroyed and there's nowhere for the spirit to go. So the reason that they have multiple spirit stones on their body is so that there are multiple chances for the spirit to get captured. On a wraith construct, it's basically the opposite. So now you're taking the spirit in form of a battery and you're putting the battery into the construct. So you're putting the soul into the robot, and then the soul basically possesses the robot.
Oh, okay.
If you want to look at it that way.
So
and
not all soul
that
stones have a soul in them.
Not all soul stones have a soul in them. And the reason that wraith constructs have multiple soul stones is, again, if a wraith construct takes a rocket to the chest and it shatters that soul stone, the soul has to have another place to go. So the reason they have multiple butthole. Right. The reason they have multiple spirit stones, not soul stones, multiple spirit stones is so that the soul has a place to inhabit.
I think soul stones are like Skyrim or some shit.
They essentially are. They function almost exactly the same way.
Right.
Yeah. Or materia. Materia from Final Fantasy VII is essentially kind of a soul stone too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Since
Elder Scrolls has almost
Craftworlds
identical soulstone properties. You use it to capture a soul, and then you can use that soul to enchant something else.
Right.
Yeah, it's essentially like a soul battery. Since Craftworlds are massive, self-sufficient, planetoid-sized starships made of wraithbone, each has a massive infinity circuit. Infinity circuits are specific to Craftworlds and Craftworld Eldar. Exodites use a very similar method, but we'll get into how that works in the Exodite specific episode. An infinity circuit is a crystalline, psychoactive, networked matrix that exists at the core of any craft world, but also extends throughout most of the wraith bone used in the ship's construction. So the core, if you want to think of it like a computer network. A computer network usually has a core operating system. If you've networked an entire building before, there's a server room. Every computer in the building is connected to that server. And because of that, the server can use that terminal as an extension of the processing power of the server. But if you were to take a hammer to that terminal, in an extreme example, if you were to destroy the terminal that you're using, the data on the server isn't lost. So Wraithbone kind of works like a big computer network. A soul can travel all the way to the outside of the ship, in theory, and if it has enough consciousness still, manifest to look out onto the wonder and beauty of space. And then if a meteor hits that piece of Wraithbone at the time it's there, that soul isn't lost. It just snaps back to the core. Inside this matrix, the dead of the craft world exist in a state close to group consciousness, providing both a massive psychic battery that is used by the craft world, as well as acting like a library of ancestral knowledge. This knowledge and power is often used to guide and advise those who live on the craft world. Since the birth of Slaanesh, the Infinity Circuit is the only afterlife the Asuryani can hope to rest in, although it's a pale comparison to what they experienced before the fall. So it's a group consciousness. You lose a lot of your individuality, a lot of the things that make you a person when you enter the Infinity Circuit. It takes very, very, very powerful psychers to maintain any individualism inside. So a lot of times, and one of the reasons that, and I'm sure you'll bring this up, Kevin, that using Wraith constructs can be a little bit like necromancy, is you're not pulling out Bob. You're pulling out a chunk of that group consciousness.
Yeah, you're pulling out
the bucket in the well, and
battery, Bob. You got battery, Bob.
Well, it could be a little bit of Bob, a little bit of Ted, a little bit of Susan, a little bit of Frank, a little bit of Cheryl.
Here's a ladle.
You're not getting soup. One person.
Soul soup.
Yeah, here's your soul soup.
Yeah, exactly. So at the time of an Asuryani's death, their soul is at risk for being torn into the warp to be consumed for an agonizing eternity by She Who Thirsts, or Slaanesh. With the use of the spirit stones, which we mentioned earlier, they kind of act like a ghost trap the soul at the Asuryani's death, and then a bone singer can merge that spirit stone into Wraithbone at the core, and then that spirit translates into the group consciousness. For this reason, the Asuryani will defend soul stones and the Infinity Circuit with a ferocity and tenacity that is stunning to be witnessed. For the loss of one or both would mean the loss of their ancestors and the only place that they could call home after they die. So when a craft world's core is threatened, other Eldari from other craft worlds will show up to protect it. A lot of times they operate independently of each other and even war with each other, but they've got like rules, like never attack the core. The core holds all of our ancestral knowledge. To destroy or lose a core is massive. These ancestral spirits can also be called on in times of great need to inhabit spirit stones embedded in wraith constructs. for the Aeldari war machine. This is seen somewhere close to necromancy. Kevin, I know you've got some thoughts on, you're good at explaining why this is considered necromancy. If you want to,
I mean, it's because, like we've been saying, you're using essentially the power, and it does diminish. Like, they can't infinitely, I'm sure, using the suit. Essentially, they're using the soul soup, like we were talking about. You might, as you said earlier, sometimes the powerful psyche will remain some individuality. Well, there's your carrot in your soup. But it's still soup, and you put that in, and if that entire construct is destroyed, you've lost all of that. That power is gone. As the suit fires weapons, as the suit does what it does, it would slowly diminish, and then that would kind of be looked upon as like, some would look at that as like, oh, we're honoring our ancestors, sending them into war, in dire times of need, whereas other people are like, that you're giving up our ancestors.
Yeah. And if the suit performs its function and the soul stone is recovered, the spirit stone is recovered, the spirit stone can be merged back into the infinity circuit, and that psychic energy can replenish, and those spirits aren't lost.
Okay, so there's no diminishing returns. Okay, I thought there might be diminishing returns.
So they'll slowly lose their psychic energy. So a wraith construct, you don't. It's like a dreadnought. It's exactly like a dreadnought at the end of the day. A dreadnought isn't always on. A dreadnought is turned off and put into storage.
Okay. I thought it was kind of like they slapped the gem in there and it goes until it's done.
So their soul is still there, but their psychic energy is being used up, right?
Their psychic energy will slowly
diminish or deplete.
Yeah.
And they need to go back into the infinity circuit to replenish their psychic energy.
So it can recharge off the hive, essentially.
And in some cases, I don't know how lore based this is. This is one of those like inferences from art. You can see the whole idea of like the xenomorphs and aliens like hiding in the wall, and then they like uncurl from the wall. They come out of the bioorganics. I've seen art where like the wraith suit is standing in the wall.
That's cool.
So the suit has returned itself and it's asleep. And this is really important because when the core is threatened, those wraith suits just come alive and step out of the wall.
That's a really cool like mental image that I'm constructing, is like a dark hallway with a glowing core at the middle, and like some whatevers are creeping in the hallway and just slowly like, could you imagine like humans stumbling upon like a mostly dead craft world?
It kind of reminds me of like the Mummy, where like they have those dudes that are like plastered into the wall.
And
like
they come out
of the wall because they essentially are the wall until the wall decides to possess them.
Right.
And since the circuit would then be like, I'm in danger.
I'm in danger.
Wake the Centurions.
And kind of to the point that Kevin was making, when a guardian dies, one of those spirit stones by the wealth is going to be able to trap that soul. When a wraith construct dies, there's usually such a wealth of firepower on it because they're fucking gnarly. There's a smaller chance that all of the stones will survive. So sometimes it is a lot more likely, any Aeldari dying is a problem, but it's a lot more likely that you'll recover a guardian spirit than you would recover a wraith spirit. So dying twice and your second death being slurped up by a straw by Slaanesh for eternity is not a nice concept.
Yeah, can you imagine? Because I'm thinking about that. I'm like, can you imagine knowing, like, because like we're like we don't know what happens after we die. So for us, we kind of like for most people, most people don't really care. It's kind of like, oh man, like whatever. If I die, I die, and then I'm not gonna worry about it anymore. You can't.
Yeah, you're
just like, my entire existence will forever be a struggle.
It's that line from Constantine where. In the movie where, he's talking to Gabriel and they're talking about faith, and Gabriel says to Constantine, it's somewhere along the lines of, there's a difference between having faith and knowing. You know what happens to you after you die. So you're doing everything you can to selfishly preserve your life. The rest of humanity has faith in what happens after they die. It's that whole concept of like, the reason that John Constantine is like condemned to hell is because he committed suicide and he's killing himself by smoking. And the only reason that he does anything to help the Catholic Church is because he's trying to buy his way into heaven, which is against the rules of that particular universe.
Right. Because
but it's that whole, it's that, it's such a creepy idea. I'm really glad you brought that up, like, Tom.
Yeah.
I'm shivering. I am shivering, and not because it is 36 degrees outside.
No, it's the Eldar all kind of have that like sword of Damocles like stuck in the back of their mind. Like if I die, then like for good, like without the soul stone, it's like imagine going into a plane like in a combat situation and being like, well, I know my ejector seat works. And then eventually you go into combat and you're like, well, I know it's broken this time. Fuck.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of Tenacious D. What is the Beelzebub song?
Beelzebub, yeah.
Where he's like, you're gonna gargle mayonnaise, and he's just like, oh no.
Oh yeah.
It's like he
sexy. Gonna gargle mayonnaise.
oh no.
Bestest master mama jail.
It's interesting that you made the comparison to fighter pilots, because one of the things that makes fighter pilots, especially American fighter pilots, so scary and edgy, and specifically the ones that are massively highly trained, like the Blue Angels and stuff, is they go into each combat, each scenario as if it's their last. They're going to die. There is no concept in their mind that they're going to live through the scenario, and it makes them much more deadly, like warriors and pilots. And you got the same thing with the Aeldari. When the Aeldari go to war, they know that they know they're going to die, and they know they're going to get fucked. So they fight so much harder.
Quite literally.
Because there is no rest for them. There is no rest in peace. Like when they die, it's just another war. Like
exactly.
There's nothing. They know that there's nothing shining,
and that's
over
what makes
the fucking rainbow.
Eldar so grimdark.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like you're never resting.
Yeah. They may be hippies who sing bones into existence, but they got a bunch of dark nasty and backside to them.
This segues perfectly. The souls preserved in the Infinity Circuit channel a massive amount of psychic energy. However, it is just a drop in the bucket when compared to the power of Slaanesh and the other ruinous powers. However, in Eldari myth, when the last Eldari soul is merged into the Affinity Circuit and the Infinity Circuits are all combined, the Eldari god of death, Yannari, will emerge to fight and overthrow Slaanesh, allowing the Eldari to begin anew. So this was all discovered and activated by Craftworld Eldar. Craftworld Eldar mastered the Infinity Circuit at some point in M32, so the 33rd millennium. This was done by This was done by Michael Phelps. This was done by Farseer.
Dude,
he can do anything
so fast that he created a new
He just slammed the whole thing. This was done by Farseer Meladrani Silversoul, who was the first to recover waystones from the Crone Worlds that were all that was left of the ancient empire. So we'll talk about waystones in the not Infinity Tree of Life, I think is what the Exodites call it in the Exodite episode.
The Exodites Infinity Circuit.
The Exodites had mastered this technology fucking 40 to 50 millennia before the fall, what we consider the beginning of the fall of the Eldari had even started, because the Exodites were like, y'all are fucked. Peace way earlier.
It's a way to link the Exodites to like wood elves more than high elves.
Yeah.
Because wood elves generally use waystones and things of that nature.
Yeah. So these waystones, this technology existed on the Crone Worlds because the Exodites took it with them. But the Craftworld Eldari, the Crone Worlds are the worlds that exist in the Eye of Terror. So it took a Farseer venturing into the Eye of Terror and getting some of these waystones and bringing them back to the Craftworlds to figure out how to do this. She realized, however, that she had to use a soul and commit it into the circuit in order to awaken the Infinity Circuit fully. And with the help of her bone singers, she practiced a ritual to sacrifice herself in order to awaken the first Infinity Circuit. Legend says that she lingers as the most collected and closest soul to the living world in Eandon's Infinity Circuit, and that she is the first to greet new souls who are committed into the circuit. So in this particular case, Silver Soul can actually be talked to specifically by the Yandin. By the Yandin. They can go and they can call on her specifically because she is a powerful enough psyker that her consciousness, while existing in this soup, she's managed to keep collection over it.
It's kind of like the Borg Queen.
I was going to say, or she sacrificed herself to become a chaos god, and she's collecting all of Yandin's souls to herself. That's bullshit.
And then of course, this technology was all the methods for doing this and for activating this technology were passed to the other craft worlds. But now that we've talked about the Infinity Circuit, we're going to get back into craft worlds specifically. So craft worlds travel at sublight speeds and house massive populations of the Aeldari. Their wraithbone ribs and superstructures act to move power, communications, and even souls about the starship, much like a heart pumping blood in a living body. The reason that they've got life support systems is the fact that the wraithbone is transmitting all of this soul energy. In many ways, craft worlds are like massive living constructs, and with that massive amount of collection of wraithbone all in one area, a craft world is actually able to heal damage much more effectively, and in some cases even naturally grow the new needed sections as the craft world expands without the help of a bone singer. So a large enough craft world, a powerful enough craft world will just realize, oh shit, the population has increased 10%. I need to grow 10% bigger. And it'll do it on its own. A craft world could take a Nova cannon, and within a couple of years, the section that was hit by the Nova cannon may have completely healed.
That's dope.
The energy is also used to provide life support and environmental control systems, even allowing plants to grow easily inside craft worlds, even if those plants seem to be exposed without protective barrier to the void of space. And we talked about that. So like, imagine a deck just going out into space and the entire thing is covered in trees. So there's just it looks like you're fucking in. There's trees in space.
That's pretty cool.
Craft worlds honestly just look super fucking amazing. I did really take a look at the artwork. I know you guys have already looked kind of there. We'll show a couple in the video.
You know what else kind of reminds me of a similar, that image again kind of brought me back, is the Gun City in episode 1.
Oh yeah. Where it's underwater.
Like, it's all like a normal city, but it's got these weird bubbles that kind of.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But you can like pass through the bubble. They're not solid.
Yeah.
They're just they just keep space out and air in, kind of thing.
So craft worlds act like surrogates to living worlds, many containing specific biomes and even entire sections of the Eldari's ancient homeworlds that were simply lifted in whole from the surface of those worlds before being installed into the ships. These could be vast wooded areas or massive agricultural areas to provide food and other renewable resources, while other areas could be entire urban districts that might contain theaters and museums that were rescued from their old worlds. So think about like a theater district, or not a theater, like an arts district of a major city, like the gas lamp. Say we wanted to save the gas lamp because something was going to happen. Slanish was coming and the gas lamp was going to go away. And then somebody just cut the gas lamp out and fucking put it in a spaceship. Here we go. We saved the whole thing.
Got it.
Wildlife preserves that are tailored to perfectly mimic the conditions needed by the plants and animals of specific biomes were also saved before the fall. And these aren't like, it's not as simple as we have a Great American's Plains, we have a high tundra forest, we have a Rocky Mountain zone, we have this is that times this planet, that planet, this planet, that planet, this planet, that planet. So there could be an entire like methane based biome that they saved because they wanted to save these weird like balloon creatures that only lived on this one Aeldari homeworld. So this isn't necessarily like, here's a forest, here's a pond, a chunk of a gas giant captured inside of this. They also have massive internal open air spaces where the aerospace fighters of the Eagle aspect shrine and the swooping hawks of the swooping hawks aspect can train in their tactics and keep their aspect shrine. So if you're familiar with like Hemlock fighters, and Razorwing, Hemlock and Razorwing are the two. No, Razorwing is Dark Eldar. There's two
Crimson Hunters,
Crimson Hunters and Hemlock fighters. So if you're familiar with those two jets, they're not practicing with those in space because those are meant for aerospace flight. So there's actually a giant internal space inside the craft world, which could be hundreds of miles in space,
Oh, that's gnarly. Like for them to train.
square miles, and they're training in it.
So it's like,
Because what else are they going to do? They have to train there.
Dogfight arena.
Yeah. So it's like when you think aircraft carrier, think that, but like times like 100.
It's an aircraft carrier, but it's also like a Dyson sphere.
Yeah.
Think of the entire continental United States being lifted off the planet and turned into a spaceship.
Yeah.
Fucking
The
gnarly.
Imperial Guard have something similar to that aspect of like a big aerial training hangar, but it's a ground hangar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the Mechanicus has cranes and everything above it. And they can basically assemble a city, out of just like concrete,
God
and build a city-sized mount town. And then the people come through and blow the shit out of it.
Yep.
And then the Mechanicus just
Just puts it all back together.
and it'll be a different one next.
Oh, it's like a sandbox
So
almost.
It's a-
Okay.
Yeah, and they can basically build whatever field they want. To
Oh, that's
simulate.
crazy. Okay.
And because warp travel still takes time. It's not instantaneous. So whatever guard regiment is being shipped off somewhere can theoretically be trained in transit for the environment they're going to.
Yeah.
One of the things that's kind of interesting about that and goes back to history, during the Battle of Britain, the Germans in France built an entire wooden airfield equipped with wooden anti-aircraft guns and wooden airplanes and everything to fool the British into thinking that they had a larger force there. The British were like, okay, we got
Wooden
you.
bomb.
They flew over with one airplane and they dropped one wooden bomb. Which has to be the biggest fuck you ever. You imagine walking out, your job is somebody's making you build wooden planes and you walk out and you're like, General, they know that we're dumb. They dropped the wooden bomb.
They know what we're doing.
They're not fooled. We're stupid. So entire sections of the craft world might also be under repair or awaiting new construction, simply slowly healing or growing into shapes that will be needed as the population grows. So think of, we talked about Space Hulks not that long ago, how entire areas of a Space Hulk will just be inaccessible for whatever reason. Same thing with the craft world. There could be an entire wing, the entire outer shell, all of the outer decks might exist, and they're just waiting for people to move in or waiting for construction to happen.
Or 10
Vast
years ago, we
space-
took a cyclonic torpedo to the port side, and now it's just it'll be ready in a few more years.
Yeah.
I know Tom's waiting to talk about it, but there is a specific craft world where something like 80% of the craft world is in that state right now.
Ulthway?
Nope. We've already named them.
It's the ending.
Yeah, it's the ending.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ending got screwed.
Pretty hard.
They were the one closest to the Ayaterra. They got stuck in the
No. They
They're
were
like
just
all dead, no?
They just most of their craft world is dead because they've just been on the butt end of every war.
of everything.
Yeah,
Is that the one that the Space Marines
Sounds like
the
Blood
Ultra
Angels.
Marines
No.
came and shat on all their kids?
probably.
Nope, that was a different one.
That was a different one.
The ending is
yeah.
the blue and yellow.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other blue and yellow one is the one that the Imperium invaded, and it's funny that the Imperium player is and shout all over them because according to Eldari lore, they got beat pretty fucking fast and pretty hard.
Well, I just mean
But that's how it always is. There's a battle between they do this with a
But
towel,
who won the war, though?
right?
I think they ended up with a truce because the Tyranids showed up.
Oh, then the Imperium definitely kicked their ass.
That's not. Yeah, you're
To the Imperium, they kicked their ass.
Anyway,
No, but
yeah.
they were legit killing Eldar children.
Oh my god.
They were in the craft world.
Dude, can you imagine how
your
horrible
base are
that is?
long
Because
toss.
Eldar take forever to
It's about I think it's about
procreate?
100 years.
Yeah,
About 100 years to
the
reach
birth rate
maturity.
is much slower.
But at the same time, if you're an 18-year-old guardsman and you've been dropped on a craft world and you've been told to defeat the enemy, and there's a 78-year-old Eldar, the Eldar are that's a child. The 18-year-old guardsman is that looks me and it's shooting
Eldar,
at me.
It looked like we were sending children to murder their children.
Oh,
Yep.
really?
Well, because 18 years old is nothing to an Eldar.
Right.
Yeah,
A day.
We'll get into a late talk here in a
But it
minute.
was mostly Space Marines. So it was a bunch of Space Marines just wrecking children.
Oh my god.
So vast space docks encircle the outer structure of a craft world, housing the Asuryani war fleets and ringing the massive ships with defensive weaponry and other defensive systems. Webway gates and tunnels used to transport war fleets are often in these areas, allowing the Asuryani to react swiftly, even from thousands of light years away. A very big difference between the way that the Aeldari use warp and the way that humanity uses warp. The humans warp translate into an area and they're like, ah, great. There's one craft world here. We've got it, boys. They won't be here for, oh, fuck, they're here. We're dead. Yeah. Because the Aeldari craft world goes, help, 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 help. And like the fucking 8 Aeldari other craft worlds go, oh, okay, cool. And they just warp instantly entire battle fleets into the sector. And then the Imperium is like, well, we only have 6 ships here and it's going to take 2 days to 700 years in the past for reinforcements to arrive.
Yeah, but sometimes it shows up 700 years in the past, and then the Eldar are like,
and then the craft world isn't there. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, but then it shows up.
There's
and then
still
it's like,
still Newtonian physics. Craft worlds can enter the warp themselves, as some webway gates are large enough to take these massively sized ships, but it doesn't happen that often. All the craft worlds are connected to each other and thousands of other worlds, as they all house their own webway gates inside the craft worlds. However, many craft worlds are still lost, moving away from one another and completely cut off, as the webway is massive and entire giant sections of it remain unmapped or even unmappable. There are so many craft worlds that aren't named in lore. And this is kind of, Tom, you had mentioned this earlier. This is the Space Marine chapter version of the Aeldari. You want to make your own craft world, make your own craft world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then all of a sudden this craft world comes online, reconnects to the webway, and the 8 major ones or 7 major ones are like, welcome, brothers. Let's now politically infight, because that's what we do.
The webway kind of gives the Mines of Moria ability, you know, like the underground highways of the dwarves and stuff. Ability to craft worlds. It's kind of that, it fits that strategic value. Kind of, and
that's the reason that the Emperor wanted to tap into it and use it, is because, again, you can have custodes on Terra ready to attack Armageddon because they're needed in Armageddon, and they take a step forward and are just on the field of battle ready to like rip through the orcs.
Yeah, Stargate
there is
style.
no translation. There's no need to travel. It just happens. And Magnus fucked that up.
Yep.
So craft worlds have been growing ever since the fall, and I think this is really important because we don't conceptualize it a lot as the lore is considered, because a lot of times we talk about how the Aeldari are losing and they're a dying people. On average, every single major craft world and most of the minor craft worlds have grown anywhere between 10 and 100% larger than they were, both in volume and in population. And that might seem minor. Like, you know, now look at the United States doubling in size in 10,000 years. The population has doubled in size. The area has doubled in size. Its war machine has doubled in size. Its economy has doubled in size. Everything has doubled in size. And then, you know, of course, give it another 10,000 years and that doubling has doubled, and you get like an exponential growth curve as far as how craft worlds grow. So we have a tendency to be like, oh, the Aeldari are dying, but the lore suggests the Aeldari are recovering. They're not doing it quickly because they're a very long-lived species, but they are recovering. Every Asuryani of a craft world is a highly trained warrior, and in times of war, these citizen warriors can be called upon to form the ranks of Aeldari Guardians, the craft world's militia. If you're playing Craftworld Eldar, this is the bulk of your army, or not the bulk of your army, the bulk of your troop choices. You have a couple of different troop choices, and it's pretty much Guardians and Dire Avengers. Dire Avengers are on a specific path, a specific aspect, but most of the time your OBSEC units and the units that you're going to be using a lot are your basic troops or Guardians. Politically, craft worlds act independently, but they do trade, share knowledge, and ally with one another. They often aid and ally one another in times of greatest need, coming together in the defense and preservation of the species, but they are incredibly petty and will get into dumb fights about dumb shit and not talk to each other for hundreds of years.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. Are they like Space Marine chapters where they were
all kinds of bullshit?
Yeah, so it's pretty similar to Space Marine chapters.
Yeah, exactly. Like the all Ultramarines might work with everybody because the Ultramarines are ultra friendly, but the Minotaurs, everybody's like, oh, fuck, those guys are here. We hate those guys. They're dicks.
So they're a little more like orcs, but they don't kill each other.
Yeah. We'll actually get into how disputes are kind of handled when we talk about the Sanhain, because they get into a lot of disputes with people. To wrap up, Exodites will often trade with the Asuryani as well, although they maintain the belief that the Asuryani are still too close to the old ways that led to the hedonism and the fall. So they don't really like to have permanent ties with Craftworlds. The Exodites have like we'll be friendly and trade, and we'll come to your defense, and we'll ask you to come to our defense, but we're not going to integrate. And the Craftworlds want to integrate with the Exodites because obviously there is a huge Exodite population as well.
Well, the Exodites are basically the Amish.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like how you can go into an Amish town and buy stuff, but they're not coming to Walmart.
Oh, dude, there's a community of Amish here in the Midwest close to where I live that they specialize in making wood furniture. Their wood furniture is beautiful. It's also thousands of dollars.
Oh my God.
Because it's so well made.
I was looking at cedar chests because I got some stuff that I want to keep moths away from, keepsake wise. And I was like, local area cedar. I'm like, $1,200 for a cedar. Jesus. And I showed my fiance and she's like, yeah, it's because it's made by the Amish. They make good shit.
Yeah, they do though. Like they talk about don't make it like they used to. Well, the Amish still make it like they used to.
Just like stuff that you would pass down, like your grandma would pass down.
You know when
exactly.
you get
you're gonna buy one piece
way too heavy.
Yeah.
But you could literally stop a bus with it.
Yeah.
That's the kind of furniture.
Why did my car not survive colliding with this bookcase?
Yeah.
So before we get into the major craft worlds, the Asuryani have one more practice they use in order to keep their souls and minds safe from the hedonism and avarice that led to damnation. They basically don't want to go back down the same path. They understand that they did it once and they can do it again. This protection against the allure of excess is a set of strict rules known as the Asuryani path. Through rigid emotional and mental discipline of a path, they master their desires towards their sensation-seeking behavior. They do this by focusing all of their energy and pursuits into one specific goal. Once they reach adulthood, they choose for themselves a discipline and begin to walk the path towards mastering that discipline. Each of these paths may require further choices and specializations or joining specific schools. But once they have mastered a path, they choose another and pour their focus into this new discipline, leaving the other behind. Even though they might forsake that past, forsake that knowledge, or not that knowledge, forsake walking that path, they carry with them the knowledge and the nourishment that they gained through their souls and minds. An Asuryani will travel many paths throughout their life, mastering skills and leading them to great accomplishments. But even in these rigid sets of rules, the nets and lures of great experiences still lay before them, and their minds are capable of depths of focus and understanding that go far beyond the human concept of obsession. When an Asuryani gets trapped by one of these obsessions, they are considered lost on the path. This is a frightening and final fate for many Asuryani and can strike even the most disciplined. In certain cases, such as the path of the warrior, those who are lost are called exarchs, while those who follow the path of the seer and are lost are called farseers. So we're going to go over the known paths pretty quickly. Paths all have aspects. We're going to touch on some aspects of some paths, the paths that have to do with fighting and war. If there's a desire to really dive into the culture of Craftworlds in the future from a writing perspective, or because you're working on lore or whatever, we'll definitely get into this. But if we were to go deep into every path and every aspect right now, this would be like a 10-hour episode.
All right. And maybe we can have other episodes on it if there's an interest in it.
Definitely. Hit us up and let us know if you want how the normal, how the everyday life of somebody on the path might work. We definitely love to talk about that stuff. So there's the path of awakening. Those who follow this path focus on looking without and the powers of observation, becoming incredibly detailed, focused, analytical specialists. So Sherlock Holmes would be on the path of awakening, or Ace Ventura, who can tell you how this is linked to bat guano because I saw concrete on your shoe. The path of the artisan. This is a very common path and has many specializations, such as the path of the poet, the path of the musician, or the path of the sculptor. These can be even further divided into schools of a specific practice. So if you wanted an idea of what that means, from a classic art standpoint, we talk about the Gothic period being a period of art that existed. We talk about not transcendentalism. That's writing. What's Van Gogh is one of these. Anyway, like there are movements in art
Impressionist.
Impressionist, thank you. Where everybody was focused on one type of artwork, and this would be a school. So there would be like a school of Impressionism. There would be a school of Gothic architecture. There would be a school of whatever. Then there's the path of the botanist. This is a path of service, but it's specialized because it includes gardeners, farmers, and biological specialists who focus on food production and keeping the various flora of the craft worlds healthy and thriving. These are the guys that really specialize, or these are the Aeldari who really specialize on maintaining those biomes and making sure that what the Aeldari want to preserve is preserved. The path of command.
Grow the dankest dank.
That's right, man. That's the school of devil's lettuce.
Yep.
This one will make your ears real sharp.
There's just the mad reefer. It's just this dude, like he's lost on the path of growing marijuana. People are like, it's really weird. I know he's been doing it for like 10,000 years.
Dude probably grows some stuff that straight sticks to the wall, though.
There's literally guys from the Imperial Guard that seek this craft world out because they're like, oh, it's the dankiest of dank.
Oh, yeah.
They smoke it and just immediately turn into a puddle.
So there's the path. There's the path.
It's called the brown bomber. Man. Why? Because you shit your pants when you smoke it.
The couch lock of 10,000 years.
The couch lock of 10,000.
Oh man, like I didn't even hit it yet. I just walked into the room and I'm already thinking, man. So there's the path of command. Path of command is followed by those who aspire to military leadership. Before an Asuryani can walk the path of command, they are expected to have mastered several other paths, most commonly the path of the warrior. There's the path of damnation. Little is known about this path, as the Asuryani admit to its existence but will refuse to talk about it. The path of damnation allows the same benefits as the other paths, but instead of inner focus, it is the absorption of psychic energy and other things through the barrier of torture and pain. Assumed to be Drukhari, and it is considered, the Drukhari are all considered to walk this path. Although whether or not the Drukhari consider themselves to walk a path is a different topic, but the Asuryani consider the Drukhari on the path of damnation. Those who walk this path are always stealing the soul energy and psychic energy of others to slowly feed on it as Slaanesh feeds on their own souls. So it prolongs their suffering while they prolong the suffering of others. We'll get into why the Drukhari like that later, but the Asuryani do have a name for it.
It's like a
There's
soul
the path
centipede.
of the, what's up?
It's like a soul centipede.
So there's the path of the dreamer. Those on this path look within, mastering meditative states and inner spaces. They can learn to control their dreams, even dreaming for days at a time. There's the path of grief. This path transforms the Asuryani into what the Imperium would consider a professional mourner or maybe a remembrancer. It is common for one to walk this path after a significant personal loss. This is obviously most often when loved ones or many loved one, a loved one or many loved ones die. Path of the healer, doctors, healers, medical scientists, pretty simple. Path of the mariner, those who serve as crewmen on many of the Asuryani starships. This is also known as the path of the steerman. There is the path of the outcast. These are those who have abandoned the ways of the craft worlds. They are getting their own section later, their own mini series, or not mini series, their own mini episode later. But this path includes rangers, Aeldari Corsair, and in some cases, the Asuryani even consider the Exodites to walk the path of the path of the outcast. There's the path of the scholar. These are those that specialize in academic knowledge and teaching. The path of the seer, fucking nerds. The path of the seer. This is the most treacherous, longest, and hardest path to walk. Its members make up the potent fellowship of Aeldari psychers known as seers. Within this path, we have a couple of different aspects, or many different aspects. Spirit seers are those that specialize in handling spirit stones, returning them to the infinity circuit, and handling the construction and deployment of wraith constructs. Warlocks are those who previously served on the path of the warrior and now bend their skills to leading war hosts into battle. On tabletop, warlocks also usually have the direct damaging psychic powers, and they get more of them. They don't get more utility, they get more damage. Bone singers are seers who tend to and grow wraithbone. Farseers are Asuryani warlocks that have become lost on the path of the seer. They are the most powerful of the Aeldari psychers, and their ultimate fate is to become part of the craft world as a crystal seer, joining their peers in the dome of the crystal seers. So as a farseer continues down the path of a farseer, their body starts to crystallize into wraithbone, and eventually they basically turn into a statue. They're still alive, and they're still merged with the infinity circuit, but they're like directly merged into the infinity circuit.
That's crazy.
Farseers?
Yeah. Farseers. Yep.
I'd never heard that one.
What about like dudes like Eldrad? Because he's like old as fuck, isn't he?
Yeah. So you don't always end up
like
becoming a crystal seer. That's just the ultimate go. That's the end of that path.
Oh, okay.
And several farseers, especially named hero farseers, got lost on the path of the farseer and then became seers, and then got lost on the path of the farseer and then became seers, because that, you know, G-Dub's doing that. Like, oh yeah, of course Yarick is still alive.
Right,
but they're doing it with Eldrad. Of course Eldrad is still alive.
Yarick has rejuve.
Right? He just reset.
Didn't Eldrad die in like 9th or some shit? Or am I thinking of someone else?
We don't. I think we might mention Eldrad a little bit later when we talk about the major craft worlds, but I don't dive into his personal history. Path of service. So the path of service is those who specialize in the few services that are left to the craft world economy. For the most cases, the craft world economy is still completely automated. This is one of the reasons the Exodites have a problem with it. So as to where there might be somebody on the path of the botanist who oversees a farm, there aren't people out there picking lettuce. There's a machine picking lettuce. Somebody on the path of the botanist is like the scientist or the job site foreman, but there is no menial labor. The path of service is where menial labor still exists. So somebody on the path of service might be like a masseuse would be an example that I could come up with. That's something that can't really be automated. Somebody, if there was a school specializing in pleasures of the flesh, that would be somebody probably on the path of service. That would be a very dangerous path of service, because obviously that's engaging in excess.
I'm gonna grow your wraith bone.
Your wraith bone.
So
the path of the wraith boner. So there's the path of shaping. These are those on a path that is specializing in the path of the artisan, and they're looking to become bone singers. So the path of shaping is between being a dude who makes really cool tools to being a dude who makes fucking weapons, essentially. A lot of times those that are on the path of the shaping are going to do the more needed mass production. So these are going to be the dudes that are creating the guns. These are going to be the dudes that are creating like the tank parts. A bone singer is going to be overseeing it, but somebody on the path of the shaping is doing the like menial part of like the manufacturing process. There's the path of the thought talker. These are Asuryani telepaths who specialize as interpreters and ambassadors to other species and beings that trade or might live on craft worlds. The way that they're able to do this is not through learning the language. They actually directly translate and speak to the language centers of your brain. So think like a babble fish from Hitchhiker's Guide, where it's just like it's eating your psychic thoughts and spitting out the right words. The last major path is the path of the warrior. There are Eldari who are focused on a path to become one of the aspect warriors. Those who become lost on this path are called Exarts. The common aspects are fire dragons, which are like your Melta-boys, howling banshees, close combat specialists, eagle pilots. Those are the pilots. Striking scorpions. They warp in and shoot the crap out of you with pistols and then light into you with chain swords.
They have a really cool weapon, which is a Manda Blaster. which it's mounted to their chin.
Oh, what the fuck?
Yeah, and it looks
And
like
it- yeah, it
scorpion
shoots.
like teeth.
Oh, that's fucking
Yeah.
sick.
You know, like crabs and scorpions have like, teeth like that. But
They're pretty dope.
So that way, when they have a chainsword in their hand, when
they can
warp
shoot
in,
you with their face.
Yeah, they're like warp spiders, but
Yeah.
instead of having the like underarm cannons that like mount to their back and shotgun blast at things, they're tearing things up in melee, and then they're like, "Wah!"
That's fucking
Yeah.
sick.
So howling banshees specialize in like psychically screaming to stun their opponents, and then they lay into them with chain blades.
Chippity
Striking
chop.
scorpions
Yeah, what was
specialize
it, like
in
Dawn
like
of War 3? I think they had Howling Banshees
Yeah.
in
All
the
of
intro.
Dawn of Wars had Dawn of War 2
In
had
their
it in the
in-
intro
their intro.
also.
Oh, okay.
Dawn of War 1 didn't have him in the intro, but had him in the game. Howling
Yeah.
Banshees have
And
been
then-
around for a long time.
and then striking scorpions like pop up in the middle and like fucking berserk tear everything apart.
Yeah,
Dark Reapers specialize in long range combat, usually with missiles.
they're like devastating.
Dire
weapons.
of
Yeah, they got those dildo launcher things, right?
Yeah,
those are the guys that
have the big,
that
like-
Death Jester dude belongs to. Magna Ra.
yeah, the dude that has just like a
Magana Ra.
ridiculous kill count.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dire Avengers are next. Dire Avengers are basically like super specialized guardians. They're really, really good warriors. Warp spiders use the warp to teleport behind enemy lines, kind of like long range scouts. Shining, or not long range scouts, they're infiltrators essentially. Shining spears, which are the dudes that drive the bikes. Then there's the swooping hawks, which are drop troops. And then there are shadow specters, which are kind of new. They're specialized. They're a Forge World unit. They have like bright lances, but different.
Yeah, these will all
Essentially.
be all like all the things that are on the path of the warrior, right?
Yeah, these are all the aspects on the path of the warrior. There's another thing that is usually thrown into this, and you can find it in the book, but they're not on the path of the warrior. Rangers are on the path of the outcast. So rangers are Eldari who have left the Craftworlds because they don't like conforming to the path system, and then they specialize in training for scouting and sniping.
They kind of go
Asuryani
like
guard.
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Like,
to
I'm
me,
they're
gonna
like
go live
they're
out-
Aragorn. They're
Yeah.
Aragorn.
Yeah, Aragorn, Obi-Wan Kenobi, kind of the same idea.
Obi-Wan has that. Yeah, same vibe.
I'm gonna go live off by myself, and I mean, only when problems arise will I do anything. But I
I'll
mostly just
come
wanna-
back when I'm needed.
Yeah,
Asuryani guardians are not walking the path of the warrior and are often walking other civilized paths. So a guardian might be walking the path of the artisan or the path of service, but they are still highly trained in combat anyway. They just act as a militia when needed, where those on the path of the warrior are always warriors. So think of, if you want to kind of differentiate a guardian from somebody on an aspect warrior, it would be guardsmen, space marines. So guardsmen are guardians. An aspect warrior would be a space marine. So this is somebody, as an aspect warrior, their entire profession is, Spartans. What is your profession? And they all go hua 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 because they're warriors first.
Yeah.
As where the the Thessalonians show up and they're like, oh, what is your profession? The guy's like, I'm a potter, and the Spartans are like, nerd. That would be the difference between guardians and aspect warriors. They're still fighting. There's just a different way of looking at them. There's a lot more detail on the path, and we'll probably cover them more if we do an aspect episode. So to get into the major craft worlds, we are going to start with Aeldari. Aeldari is far out on the frontier of Ultima Segmentum, close to the edge of explored space. They are known for being even more zealous in their adherence to the paths, following even stricter rules than most other Asuryani. This rigorous attitude has seen many of the more freedom-loving individuals from the craft world choose the path of the exile or the path of the outcast to become rangers and even Eldari corsairs. While most craft worlds make use of rangers, these are the most accurate and trained scout snipers that an Eldari warhost can field. No craft world produces more or better rangers than Aeldari. While, like all rangers, they do not live on the craft world and are often out wandering the galaxies, Aeldari rangers are fiercely loyal and will return often to visit friends and family, and always return when the craft world is in a time of need. Aeldari not only fields a high number of rangers, but they are the only craft world who have access to the most highly trained and skilled rangers who are known as pathfinders. These are scouts and snipers without comparison, and they can cause havoc among even the most trained of enemies, as was the case when the Imperium of Man attempted to invade the craft world. So this is what Kevin was talking about. The Imperium invaded Alatok, and they did a bunch of damage within a couple of days or weeks. The lore is really hazy on how long it was, and then the Pathfinders showed up and started doing things like one-shotting 3 Space Marines because the Space Marines were standing in a line, and all 3 Space Marines were lieutenants. And after a certain point, the Space Marines were like, "Oh fuck, we're getting owned." And it wasn't that they were getting wiped out. It was that they were losing way more, way faster than they were comfortable with. And they were just like, fuck it, this isn't worth it. And they left.
Turned into Vietnam, and they were like, we out.
And it turned into Vietnam fast. Alatok also remembers the Eldari people's oldest enemies, the Necrons. And they often say that every other craft world doesn't, and they keep an ever watchful eye. They will actively sabotage tomb worlds, and they will lend aid to Exodites and even people in the Imperium when it comes to the Necrons. The craft world's rune is the Sword of Vol, which represents the defiance and determination of their people. In Eldari myth, Vol, the smith god, forged this divine weapon for his desperate war against the Eldari war god, Kala Mencha Kane. Their colors are dark blue and yellow. So the rune looks like a sword over a crescent moon with like an eye behind it or a sunburst behind it. It's pretty cool looking. We'll throw a picture up on it on the video. You guys have any thoughts on LA talk?
No. How many craft worlds are there?
Lots.
Maybe 7.
Okay, so it's kind of like orcs, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of minor craft worlds, which I don't mind getting into if we do like a creative writing, how to creative write your own craft world. But there's a lot of minor craft worlds, and you can make your own craft worlds. However, we're just going to cover the big boys.
Yeah, I honestly don't know shit about Eldar. Like I know a little bit about. I thought I knew a little bit about Oathway and Alatok, but that's about it.
I only know things about Yandin.
So the Black Library is a secret craft world that serves as the Eldari people's repository for forbidden lore concerning the ruinous powers of chaos. Its location is deep. Its location is deep in the labyrinthian passages of the Webway, and it is a furiously protected secret. After the fall, the craft worlds became the only source of knowledge on ancient sorcery, how to master psychic powers and psychic potential, and the ruinous powers. But as these craft worlds drifted ever further apart, this knowledge became very fragmented. The library was created, or the library was invested in. It probably already existed in the Webway, just under a different name. The library is now governed by a body of Asuryani Farseers that are drawn from all of the craft worlds, and they are known as the Black Council. They are under the protection of the Harlequins as part of their service to the laughing god Segarak. This council is the closest thing to a single governing body that the Eldari people have, and their focus is given over to preserving the largest single collection of knowledge in how to deal with and even defeat various denizens of the warp. The Black Library acts to protect itself, and it is said that none who have not yet quieted the chaos within are ever allowed entrance. Not many even know of its existence, and those who do can consider it a myth. However, it is rumored that at least one Inquisitor has gained access and returns from time to time. So the Black Library will work with other people because the biggest enemy is the ruinous powers.
Yep. I think it's a cool concept.
Isn't it also what Games Workshop is called their book? Their company?
Yes.
Their publishing company is called the
Black Library is protected by the Harlequins, right?
Yes. Yeah. The Harlequins act as so the Harlequins have a deal to protect their souls from Slaanesh with Segarak, who's the laughing god.
Right.
And the deal that Segarak needs is that the Harlequins need to protect the Black Library.
Gotcha. And they're like they're like a craft world, I guess you could say.
It's
essentially the Harlequins are a very specific craft world. Yeah.
It's almost like that Coco movie where you only exist as long as people remember you.
Oh yeah.
So as long as the Black Library exists, Segarak exists.
Oh okay.
Yeah. So they protect it so that way it protects.
It's like
itself.
mutual benefit for Segarak.
Yeah.
So,
Kegarak, I think is how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
That's right. Kegarak. We talked about that.
Yeah.
It's keg. So Beltane is the next craft world. This is the most martial of all craft worlds, forever striving to see the return of the ancient Aeldari Empire to their former glory. For an Asuryani of the Beltane, the path of the warrior and specializations into aspect schools is always considered the first step upon the Asuryani path. They have a strong code of honor and believe the best way to die is to die fighting. Beltane's armies contain the highest percentage of elite troops and field much fewer guardians when compared to other craft worlds. Their highly trained forces are known as the Stormwind, and often come to the aid of Exodite worlds beset by orcs, Drukhari, and other Xenos forces. However, this is because, as they see it, when the time comes to reclaim and rebuild the Empire, the first worlds that they will cover in conquest in the name of the Aeldari Empire will be the maiden worlds of the Exodites. So they come to the defense of the Exodites because they're like, that's our shit. That's not your shit. That's our shit. You're living there and we'll let you keep living there, but the greater good.
The greater good.
The greater good.
Their world rune is the Aeldari rune for rebirth, and Beltane means rebirth of ancient days. Their colors are green and white. So if you've seen box like heavy metal paint schemes for Aeldari, they're all of these they're all of these craft worlds we're talking about. So the green helmet, white body, Beltane. The dark blue heads and kind of like golds accents, that's Alatok. Black Library is its own thing. We didn't mention a rune world or colors because they don't have a rune world or colors because they're getting their entire fucking own episode. Iyanden was once the largest and most prosperous of all Asuryani craft worlds, but they barely survived an attack from Hive Fleet Kraken, which destroyed the craft world and killed 80% of its population. At the moment of total annihilation, the craft world was saved by the exiled Aeldari Corsair Prince Uriel, who had at one time been the High Admiral of Ianden's fleet. Even though Uriel and his Corsair fleet had vowed never to return home, they couldn't bear to see their craft world ravaged and launched an attack against the Tyranids. The subsequent battle left much of the craft world in ruins, and today many sections are uninhabited as they heal and are being repaired. The surviving population is spread incredibly thin across the wounded starship. This has forced Iyanden to often call more heavily on the spirits of the fallen in their infinity circuit, and they often field more wraith constructs in times of need. Their world rune means light in the darkness, and it is a reference to the ever-burning shrine that honors Asurion, the Phoenix King. Their colors are also blue and yellow, but this is more like a golden blue, like a light blue and a gold.
They're said to have like the best like Wraith Lord or Wraith Knights or the whatever the big ones are.
Wraith Knights are the really big ones. So a Wraith Knight has an Aeldari pilot in it with with spirit stones and souls that assist him.
Oh, that's cool. Like almost like a
Wraith Knight is knight sized, right? Yeah. Wraith Lord is the little dude that's what like the size of a dreadnought.
Do they have a name for the Titan one?
The Aeldari Titans
sized.
Yeah.
Yeah, Aeldari Titans are also multiple pilots and multiple like wraith constructs. What it's called. So think of the good analogy to human knights is like when we talk about knights, there's a pilot. There's usually a preset pilot. There might be a co-pilot or two co-pilots, depending on. I guess that's more like Titan size.
That's once you get to Titans, yeah.
There's usually a servitor that's slaved into the weapon systems in some way, shape, or form. This is kind of the same thing. So there's an Aeldari aspect warrior inside of a Wraith Knight, and then there's a co-pilot essentially that's a spirit that's helping to power the entire vehicle as well as like manage. Think of like fighter pilots. There's the dude flying the airplane. There's the dude that handles all the systems.
Yeah.
Wait, so like they have they have an actual living pilot in them?
There's a living pilot and the big ones, the Wraith Knights, there's a living pilot in them. Yep.
The Wraith Knight.
Yes, the Knights. There's a dude in
Wraith Lords or Dreadnoughts.
I thought the Wraith Knight was just soul stones.
The Dread Lords and the Wraith Guard, or the Dread Lords. The Wraith Lords.
The Dreadnought sized one.
Yeah, Wraith Lords.
Is just power off spirit stones.
But the Wraith Knight is
Knight. then it becomes pilot.
Oh wow, that makes so much more
And
sense
everything
now.
above that.
Oh, okay.
Basically, everything that the Eldar has an Imperial equivalent.
No. I know. I just didn't remember.
So this guy has a human, or not a human, an Eldari pilot.
Yeah.
him.
Well, it's funny because I saw somebody paint one up, and they did it where the Eldar was like in the head, but they were like grafted into it, and I was like, that's not how that works, and I was wrong.
I want corrected.
I think I want to dive into like Wraith Knights. Maybe we'll do like a specialized mini episode or a specialized episode on some stuff. Just Wraith constructs.
Well, we should do an episode that is the big bad boys of the Imperial of Warhammer universe.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool.
Where it's
that'd
like Imperial Knights, Wraith Lord or Wraith Knights, Dreadnoughts, like things like that.
Yeah, like just talk about them all. That'd be cool. I like that.
Stompers,
Titans, like because I still really want to talk about Titans. Like we haven't yet.
We haven't gotten to Titans.
Hierophants.
Yeah.
We've teased.
Yeah, Hierophants.
So Samhain is the next one. The Craftworld of Samhain was the first to heed the Farseer's warnings and abandon the Crone worlds of the Eldari Empire as the fall approached. They have spent more time isolated from the rest of the Craftworlds, although they do maintain connections to many Exodite worlds. This has kind of led to them being much closer as far as their society goes and their culture goes to being Exodites than anybody else. They are fierce warriors who place more stock in martial prowess on the field of battle than any of their other kin. So as to where the Beltane, like a professional military, so think like the Navy, if you want a context into it, and then the Samhain are more like berserker warriors from the Vikings. So they're both very martially focused, but the Samhain do it on a like individualistic combatant standpoint, as to where the Beltane do it from like our entire military might standpoint.
Special ops versus Legion.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, there you go. All these factors have mixed along with their pride and have led them into more open conflict among themselves and other craft worlds. While often these are handled with ritualistic duels between chosen warriors from different craft worlds. You were asking how craft worlds solve problems earlier. There is such a high number of these that come out of the Samhain, and such a high number of these result in deaths when the Samhain are involved, that they have this reputation as kind of like barbaric people. Like the rest of the Eldar are like, no, first blood. The Samhain are like, no, when I gouge out your fucking eyes. So their world rune represents the serpent, which in Eldari myth is the only creature believed to live in both the material and psychic universe at the same time. The serpent is said to know all secrets of the past, the present, and the future. Samhain means quest of enlightenment. The Eldari word for snake and secret is the same, and their colors are black and red. So if you've ever seen a lot of like the black vehicles with the serpent on them, which are really common in the heavy metal paint schemes, those dudes come from here. So the last craft world that we are going to talk about is the Ulthwé. This is one of the largest craft worlds. Ulthwé was caught in the pool of the Eye of Terror and now orbits it. The craft world faces constant dangers from both chaos marauders and demons, and it has served as a bastion against the forces of the dark gods for thousands of Terran years. If you want a comparison, Cadia is your comparison.
Oh, okay.
The constant war and risk of attacks has hardened the craft world citizens, and it maintains a standing militia known as Black Guardians, who are highly skilled and better trained than guardians of most other craft worlds. Black Guardians usually use chain weapons of some form. They got a different paint scheme. They've got a black paint scheme. Its proximity to the eye has also given Ulthwé an unusually large number of incredibly potent psychers, even for the Eldari people. One of the most famous and integral aspects of the Ulthwé craft world is that of its Seer Council, which was formerly led by the now exiled Eldrad Ulthran.
Oh, he's exiled, not dead. Okay.
Who was banished due to his support for the Yannari. The council both overtly and secretly interferes with other races, particularly humanity, in an attempt to steer fate to the Eldari's favor. So a lot of the like bad reputation of the Eldari as being a meddling species actually comes from this one craft world. This practice has no doubt allowed Ulthwé to survive so long in such a perilous situation. This craft world's world rune, the Eye of Isha, symbolizes the sorrow of Isha, the goddess of the harvest and fertility, for whom all Eldari are believed to be descended. Isha, it is said, wept bitterly when Asuran, the king of the gods, ordered her separation from her mortal children. Val forged her tears into the first glittering spirit stones, that her grief might not be in vain and mortals might still be able to commune in some form with those in the realm of the gods. Today, the warriors of Ulithway bear this symbol as their sigil, a poignant reminder of the divinity that they lost long ago. So yeah, that wraps it up for Craftworld Eldari. You would pick one of those craft worlds or create your own craft world in order to play them. We will be looking into the Drukhari, the Harlequins, the Yannari, the Exodites, and the Outcasts in future episodes as we explore more of the lore and how it weaves between all the different races. But in order to satisfy the Golden Three, we are covering the Eldar book. So if you go out right now and you purchase the Eldar Codex, this is the lore and the basis for that codex, and it'll allow you to build a craft world force. Guys, what do we have going on as far as hobby updates? Anything we want to share? Anything?
I finished building some heavy intercessors and an impulsor, and I finished 30 gene stealers and like 15 aberrants.
Jesus
Nice.
Christ.
You've been sharing some pictures up on the socials, on the Instas?
Yeah. My phone was broke. My phone's camera was broken for a while, so I got a new phone. I can start taking pictures again.
Cool.
I haven't really done anything because I'm getting ready to move. But once I move, coming soon, very soon,
I know how
actually,
that works, man.
I will have.
I know how that works.
I will have a desk to paint at specifically.
Very cool. Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. Tom, how about you?
I have two new knights and
on the way in transit.
In transit with
Nice.
waves. But yeah, I'm super excited. Actually, I haven't done much modeling. I have been doing. It's been fair season, so I've been doing the Renaissance fairs. That's over now, and I started a new job that's taken up my 90% of my time. But now without fair season, I'll actually have time again. And I'm actually really, really excited to build these knights and get them painted. I'm really excited about it.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
So I started working on my Crute, and I started working on my Crute for a very specific reason. So hopefully in just about a month or so, I'll probably be on stream with you guys again.
Yeah.
Hopefully doing some kill team stuff with my Cruty boys. So I'll try to post some updates on my Crute. I might do some on-screen painting as well. And hopefully here in the next couple of days, I'm going to go play my Necron in the local tournament scene or the local league scene. So that'll be pretty cool.
Ooh, fun with all your new core keywords.
Right.
Yeah. So we ran a little micro contest, not a micro contest. We're starting to get a little bit more involved in social media and trying to kind of let more people know that the show exists. The feedback that we've gotten from you guys is that the show is pretty damn cool and that you wished that you could experience it with more people. And there's been a lot of community growth as far as Discord goes and some various stuff. So we started to do some little things here and there. One of the things we did was we did a like, share, and retweet for shout outs, and we wanted to go ahead and thank the people who did that. So first off is Raz Minis. That's at Raz Minis on Twitter. She liked and gave us a retweet. She's got some pretty cool, I think she's in England somewhere. She has some pretty cool paint jobs. You can check her out again on her Twitter and just kind of see what she's doing. Also wanted to shout out Comic Book Couples Counseling, which is at CBCC Podcast, also on Twitter. They've got a podcast that obviously centers around comic books, so and couples counseling. So they're pretty cool. We're super glad that they shouted us out. And then over on Facebook, we got a shout out from Kimberly S. Thank you very much. Also, for those of you who are on our Facebook community, Kimberly is one of our moderators. We also got some shout outs from Kevin S. on Facebook, as well as Mark K on Facebook. You guys got shout outs even though you're here. Because you did the requirements, so I'm shouting you out.
Yeah, I did. So, yeah. I did share things on Facebook.
Yeah. So if you guys have any questions about how the Aeldari work, about how the Asuryani work, or you have questions about Craftworlds, or you just have comments, or you're looking into writing your own lore, or you have your own lore written already and you want to share it with us, please email us at underthehiveofmadness@gmail.com or grimdarkgaming@gmail.com. You can also connect with us a little bit more directly through our Discord. We have a pretty awesome and growing community.
That's
over there.
Probably the best way to reach us. The Discord, the disco thingy.
The disco thingy. We have a community lore building project over there for a lot of the kind of Innsmouth little teases, little one-liners that we drop at the top and the bottom of everything. So that's a good way to connect with us.
I slammed it pretty hard the other day on that. On the homebrew lore, I was like, "This is not going to happen."
Dude, there's been some fucking dope homebrew lore conversations recently. I'm super excited. It's great to see that a lot of you guys really like lore, which makes sense. We're a creative writing and lore based podcast, so I hope.
Shout out to Noir for not letting me sleep and making me read all of his lore every night over the past 2 Renaissance fairs. Every time I saw that dude, he was like, hey, read it. And I was like, I guess I'm doing that now.
This is what I'm doing now. We do have his lore. So on our upcoming Tales from the Hive, which will probably be in a couple episodes, we did a bunch of special episodes for Halloween. So we're kind of catching up on our normal routine, but we'll be jumping back into the Nurgle Nuggets and the Spooky Dookies. Cool. We'll be jumping back into that stuff soon. If you guys would like to support us a little bit more directly, we do have a Patreon, which is patreon.com/underthehiveofmadness. The other thing that helps us grow and helps us kind of stand out in the algorithms is depending on the podcast that you are using, the podcaster you are using, you can either follow us, like us, or review us. Please do that. Please head over to iTunes and give us a review. Let us know how many stars we're worth and give us some feedback there. That definitely helps us. It helps us kind of know where to go. For those of you who listen who aren't involved in the community, it also kind of gives us a barometer setting for how entertaining we are. You can follow us on Spotify. That definitely also helps. That kind of helps us stand out in the algorithm there as well. Helps more people find the show so more people can enjoy what you guys are all enjoying. There's other shit that we talk about here. Our website is kind of currently on hold, just based on the fact that I moved, Kevin's getting ready to move, and our production meeting schedules have kind of shifted a little bit. So that is something that we're trying to get to you guys, but we're definitely trying to invest time in other things like Patreon rewards and kind of fleshing that out a little bit more. Trying to get some of the artwork that we've promised finished and actually released is taken precedent over trying to create the website. But we do have plans and notes, and we will eventually do it. However, if you're looking for another way to find us around the wilds of the internet, you can use our link tree. As always, I will put all the spellings for everything we have just talked about in the show notes, so it's much easier for you to just click a link and find us. Well, guys, I feel like the Arbites presence in the toenail has gotten a little shock molly, even though we're not supposed to bring weapons in here. So I don't know about you, but I'm feeling the need to skip out and maybe go sump fishing.
We should get out of here before they try to press gang us. That's for sure.
Skedaddly do.
I really don't want to be in Arbites. Skedaddly do. That's it from us at 665.66 UHMR Chemrat Radio this afternoon. We will be back relatively close to the same ratty time, but definitely only on the same ratty channel at some point in the future. And remember, when you find yourself around a four-armed emperor and a sack of fish, the sack of fish won't eat your foot.
Your whole foot, not even your toe. He won't eat your leg.
Sack of fish.